Hello, my name is Franklin, and today we're going to be discussing about information systems. First, we start with the stakeholder analysis. Now, the purpose of this phase is to determine who our stakeholders are, analyze them, and prioritize them using the power interest grid. First, we state who a stakeholder is. A stakeholder is anyone who has an interest in the system being developed. Then we list the possible stakeholders who may be interested in learning language limited. Possible stakeholders include students, tutors, authors, business owners. Next, we prioritize them using the power interest grid. For the students, they would have high power but lower interest. The tutors will have higher interest but lower power. Authors too would have higher interest but lower power. And the business owner would have high interest and high power. Now we go to the software development life cycles. Now, a typical software development life cycle has 6 phases: the analysis phase, design phase, develop phase, testing phase, release phase, and monitoring phase. There are several types of SDLC, but today we will be discussing the 3 major types: the agile, the waterfall, and the incremental. The agile approach. This is an interactive method of software development where the system is created in phases. Parts and functions of the system go through a full cycle, and this is continuously done until there's a finished system. Pros. The pros are it is interactive, which means there's constant feedback. None of the teams involved is left idle, and it offers flexibility. The cons are it is time consuming, expensive, may become an inconvenience for the stakeholder. The stakeholder may not always be present, and it's hard to determine progress, and it's also unpredictable. Next, we have the waterfall. This is the easiest approach to software development lifecycle. In this approach, each phase is carried out only once. The pros: it is ideal for small projects, low cost, as it is cost effective. It is time conservant, and progress can be conclusively defined. Cons: it is not very interactive. There can be conflict between phases which cannot be treated properly, and it is rigid and inflexible, and not advisable for complex projects with complex requirements. Next, we have the incremental. In this methodology of software development, the agile and the waterfall approach are merged together and created to make one. In this methodology, the software has 2 releases, with the second having more function than the first. The pros are: it generates a working software early, it is more flexible than the waterfall, it is interactive, and is less expensive than the agile. The cons: it is more costly than the waterfall approach, more time consuming, and not as interactive as the agile. Now we have the requirements analysis phase. In this phase, we engage the stakeholders as much as possible to get as much information on their expectations and requirements of the system. There are 3 stages involved in the requirements analysis phase: the requirements solicitation, requirement specifications, and requirements validation. For input, we have the stakeholder interviews and fact-finding methods, and output, we have the requirement specifications document. Now, requirements elicitation. Here we find out as much as possible on the client's organizations and their concerns for the system being developed. We use fact-finding techniques such as interviews, questionnaires, and structured meetings. Now, the requirements specifications. In this stage, we collect the requirements listed in the problem elicitation document and filter them. First, we conduct a feasibility study to ensure the requirements listed can be accomplished by the development staff. Then we use Moscow method of prioritization to prioritize them and so their relevance. Next, we have the requirements analysis, requirements validation stage. This is the next step after requirement specification. In this step, the specification document is reviewed by the stakeholder and development team to ensure they have the right requirements listed. This can be carried out using FAG and inspection, popular method of requirement validation. Now, requirements analysis continued. There are 2 types of requirements: the functional and the non-functional requirements. The functional test functionality, which is fulfilling the needs of the customer, what the program should be able to do, what it should do. And the non-functional represent constraints, that's usability, reliability, performance, and supportability. Next, we have design phase. Post-audit phase is to design a software to meet the requirement specifications as defined by the stakeholders. We focus on the how data enters the software, how data is stored, how data travels, how data interacts with the entities. Several processes involved in designing the software are data flow diagrams, entity relationship diagrams, normalization, and human-computer interface. The input data is the requirements for specifications document, and the output data is the detailed design document. Now, data flow diagrams. Data flow process modeling is used to show a system's boundaries and model how data enters, travels, and is stored in the system. Data flow diagrams have two types. We have the level 0 and the level 1. The data flow diagram has several limitations. For example, they don't show how often processes occur, they don't show the sequence processes occur, they don't show the time interval between processes. Now, the level 0 diagram. This is the level 0 diagram for the Learning Language Limited company. This diagram shows us a simplified form of the system processes and entities in 2 or 3 boxes. Now, the circles represent external entities, the arrows represent the way data flows, the direction data flows, and the square represents the processes. Now, this is a more complex diagram. This is a level 1 diagram. The open rectangles represent data storage. The gray boxes, rectangles, represent processes, and the circles represent external entities. The arrows represent the direction in which data flows. Now, ERDs. An ERD data modeling tool is used to define processes in an information system, showing the relationship between people, objects, places, and events within the system. An ERD diagram always has stream models in which it is viewed from to give a different perspective each time. You have the conceptual model, the logical model, and the physical model. Now, this is a conceptual model for Learning Language Limited. Now we have a student, lesson, author, and tutor. These are entities. The rectangles represent entities, the circles represent optionality, and the arrows represent cardinality. Now you have the ERD logical model. This is a more complex diagram for the ERD. This shows the data being stored in each entity. I have the physical model. This is diving into the ERD modeling a bit more, with each entity, each data given how it shows how each data is stored, be it text, number, or other forms of storage. Differences between DFD and ERD. The DFD focuses on showing how data flows in the system. The ERD focuses on showing the relationship between entities and how the database will look, not how to implement it. Overall, circles, rectangles, and arrows are used to show the relationship between the entities in the DFT. Rectangular boxes are used to show the entities in an ERD, with lines connecting them to represent cardinality and optionality. In DFD, each storing or process must have data flowing in or out of it. ERD does not show processes, it simply shows how data in each entity will look. Design phase, normalization. Normalization is the process of organizing the database and eliminating duplicate data. This reduces redundancy and also reduces the size and therefore avoids data corruption. Normalization has 4 steps. We have the zero normal form, which is the base form, the convenient form, the first normal form, second normal form, and the third normal form. Next, we go to the HCI. Here we deal with the interaction between humans and the software. HCI stands for Human-Computer Interface. In HCI designs, we work with wireframe diagrams. Wireframe diagram shows how the software will look to a user and how it interacts with the user. When creating HCI designs, we use terms like guidelines and standards. Now, standards are mandatory procedures or components which must be taken into account when working with the software design. Guidelines, on the other hand, help determine the course of action taken when creating and operating the system. Unlike standards, they are not mandatory. Usability refers to the degree of user-friendliness of the system and the degree to which it can fulfill its requirements efficiently. Accessibility refers to the degree the project can be accessed by the user. Now we have the development phase. In this phase, we work on creating the physical version of the project. Popular development tools for the database engineering are Oracle, Microsoft SQL, MySQL, and Microsoft Access in order of popularity. Popular programming software include JavaScript, HTML, PHP, Python, and Java. The input data for this phase is the detailed design document, and the output data is the finished software. Next, we go to the testing phase. This phase deals with verification and validation of the software. Using V-diagram and testing methods, we can determine if it meets the requirements needed and if there are any errors which may need fixing. There are two main testing methods. We have the black box testing method and the white box testing method. The input data for this phase is the requirement specifications, detailed design document, and the finished software. The output data is the finished fault-free software. Now, the user requirements. This is a V-diagram. User requirements to the acceptance testing, software requirements, system testing, architectural design, the integration test, detailed design, the unit test, and then the code. Now, white box testing. White box testing is a testing method where the source code of the system is tested line by line, as each line of the coding is tested. The pros, introspection. It is thorough. The cons, it is complex and doesn't test functionality. The testers are the programmer and the maintainer, who is someone who is a programmer who didn't write the code. Black box testing is a testing method whereby the internal structure of the software is unknown. Input is simply given to the system, and acceptability is determined by the output gotten. Pros, it is an easier method for staff. It focuses on the functions required and can be delegated to anyone. Cons, redundant, and no introspection. The testers are testing team, beta testers, and the client. Now you have the release phase, also known as the deployment phase. This is where the software is released to the customers. The release product is usually accompanied by guides, files, and installation packages for the customers. There are three major ways the system is released. We have the direct conversion, the Big Bang method, the parallel adoption, and the phased adoption. Now we have the direct conversion method, also referred to as the Big Bang method. The old system is scrapped completely and is replaced by a new system. Pros, work on the organization is minimized, shorter implementation time, and lower costs. Cons, high risk, details overlooked, no system to compare the performance of the new system to, and no fallback system if the new system fails. The phased conversion method. This method of conversion, small changes are made to the system over time. The pros, less risky than the Big Bang method. Employees can adapt to the new system easily. Small details can be fixed as time goes. Cons, time consuming, continuous changes may cause disruption, and temporary bridges need to connect old and new systems. Now I have the parallel conversion. In this method of release, both old and new systems run side by side. The pros, least risky, and is faster than the phased conversion. Cons, very expensive and not very efficient. Now the operations and maintenance phase. This is the last phase and begins after the system has been released to the public. As new software is created each year and technology advances, the development team would need to keep an eye on the project. This involves providing customer support and upgrading the system from time to time. And with that, my presentation ends. Thank you for listening.